And here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share an update on my experience with the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra 5G, and that's the phone in the center of this frame. I've got the Note 9 on the left, the Note 10 Plus on the right, and then I even have this old guy, the Note 7, here next to me. And the reason I've incorporated this into today's video is that even though I'm about to discuss why the Note 20 Ultra in my early impressions is the best phone on the market here in 2020, and both the Note 9 and Note 10 Plus are still incredibly relevant, this is a reminder of days past that we are very fortunate not to be dealing with. And this is a real Note 7. I have not powered it on since I think I used it for about 6 months or 5 months, and you can see it's still trying to explode. And this was Samsung's biggest miss in the history of the Note lineup. And they did lose their way a little bit when they introduced the Note 8. There was a revamp from this design, no question, but really just making it a little bit more or less bezel-tastic. And then we ultimately got the Note 9, which was a much more refined product, and in my opinion was the best Note ever made at its time. I can't say that about every generation. I mean, I really loved the Note 7 until it became explosive. The Note 10 Plus, I didn't think I was going to keep because, well, I was perfectly happy with the Note 9. It had great battery life, solid cameras, new S Pen functions, everything's dimming on me at the same time. Let's play a little phone piano. The end result was that I kind of fell for the Note 10 Plus in that it was a even cleaner design. They did away with the headphone jack and the LED notification. I did not like the cutout, and that was really one of my biggest gripes, was that the front-facing camera became a pinhole that ate into the display. And if you know anything about the Note lineup, it's always been about the S Pen and the display. Going back to 2012, when Samsung first revealed the original Note, and I was there at CES, I thought they were a little bit out of their mind. But the fact remained that Samsung knew exactly what they were doing. They were taking what Apple had done, which was popularize a touchscreen smartphone and take it to the next level. And they were more than successful. In fact, Apple copied them and basically embraced large form factors that Steve Jobs never imagined to be possible. And that's a whole discussion for another time. Both companies get credit where it's deserved. And the Note 20 Ultra is the culmination in many ways of that entire objective. I mean, the S Pen performance is improved. The latency is, definitely better than previous generations. And I'll do a side-by-side, but this was one of the things Samsung talked about for a reason. They did legitimately improve the touch sensitivity of this display, and more importantly, the S Pen latency. So that's a big improvement. But that's really not the selling point of this device, although you would imagine it might be. The selling point is obviously that on paper, this has everything going for it. A bigger battery than either of these phones, a better camera array than either of these phones, a bigger display than either of these phones that actually also supports a 120 hertz refresh rate. The question is, do you need all of those things? And I can't answer that, but I can tell you, my, again, initial impressions, which are that this is the best phone on the market. But with that said, if I owned the Note 10 Plus, I wouldn't upgrade to this phone. And by the way, this is not my phone anymore. It's my fiance's phone. So I would not make that transition. In fact, that's one of the reasons my fiance is not upgrading to the Note 20, is because before I even ordered mine, and this is not a review unit, I purchased this, we had the discussion about whether or not it was a worthwhile upgrade, and she asked me my opinion, and before it even got here, she had made up her own mind that it wasn't worth the fresh cash. I mean, when you look at these phones side by side, and both of these, by the way, are sporting a Whitestone dome glass screen protector, they are so similar. We've got a 6.9-inch display, a 6.8-inch display. Yes, the cameras are beefed up, but the Note 10, actually, the Note 10 Plus, supports 45-watt charging. The Note 20 does not. Both, of course, are IP68. The processor in the Note 20 Ultra is faster, no question about it, but in real world use, roughly the same. We do have 5G, but we don't live in a market that has 5G, so that's, irrelevant. Internal storage, the base configuration of the Note 10 Plus, 256 gigs. The base configuration, as I mentioned, of the Note 20 Ultra, 128. Now, I do not know why Samsung did that, but they deserve to be reminded that was a shitty move. That shouldn't have been done, especially in the course of a pandemic. They didn't need to see how much they could squeeze out of us. I love Samsung, but at the same time, way to make the most powerful phone ever in just about every way, and then underpower it on internal storage when you make your own storage. What the hell was Samsung thinking? I've got to call it exactly what it is. And that's one of the reasons, among many others, that, as I mentioned, if you own the Note 10, the Note 10 Plus. The Note 10 they completely did away with because the Note 20 is not a sequel to that device since it got so large. But I don't see an upgrade path right now from the Note 10 Plus to this device. I mean, if you have to have the latest and greatest, I get it. Everyone who watches my channel, you know what I do. So I understand. But if we're talking about what you're getting, yes, the cameras are improved, no question about it. No question that the display is improved, but to go from 6.8 to 6.9, you're really just getting the 120 hertz refresh rate, which is a battery killer, by the way. I don't see a huge jump. And then the fact that they both, sport 12 gigs of RAM. This is a comparison I will do for another day, but I wanted to mention it at least out of the gate that, this phone is better than either of these in every way. Its audio clarity, quality, how loud it gets. I already mentioned the cameras. The displays are really close, though. If I take away the 120 hertz, which I think a lot of you will when you realize the hit it takes on battery, I can't make a huge argument. This phone only got bigger. Granted, marginally bigger. I don't know that it was a good move, frankly. It didn't need to get bigger. That's what the Galaxy Z Fold 2 is for. In fact, that to me is the whole concept of folding phones, is that where you want a large device that can be small in your pocket, you've got the Z Fold 2. And then when you want a really small phone that can become larger, you have the Z Flip, which has been my daily driver, and the Note 20 Ultra may be supplanting. I'll end up determining that through the course of my review and whether or not I keep it. The reason I have the Note 9 here is that it's still so competent in 2020, especially the half terabyte model. You can pick this up for probably around 500 and change US new on any given day. Even if you pick it up for around that used, it is still such a good phone. 8 gigs of RAM. Yes, it doesn't have the 12 here. 6.4-inch display that I will remind you is far more friendly to single-handed use. And that's why I gotta say that I really struggled with giving up the Note 9 when I was reviewing the Note 10. It also didn't help that we were forced out of our home by another hurricane evacuation. Kind of forced my hand and didn't give me the luxury of continuing to focus on this. But battery life on this phone was great, and that's because I do think it struck the right balance between battery size, screen real estate. They hadn't gone up to this new ginormous display. We still had an LED notification light. We still had a beautiful little headphone jack, which I don't care if it's there, but this idea of less is more that Apple has made prevalent is a real bite in the ass. I have to say, I would rather have more. There has to be a good reason to get rid of it, and if it's just for design, I don't agree with that move. But at any rate, I'm not belaboring the lack of headphone jack on either of these. I've already said this is the best phone out there, and really this is the other best phone out there. If you're an iPhone user, well, help yourself. But overall, this really, in my opinion, is still incredibly relevant today here in 2020. The performance is top-notch still, and that's because, quite frankly, the Snapdragon line of processors that drives all of these hasn't made incredible moves since this generation of phone. The 855 here is good, the 865 that's in the S20 Ultra is good, and then the 865 Plus that's here is even better, but is it going to change the way you use the device and multitask with it? No, not really. That's not going to happen. So ultimately, I think it comes down to whether or not you want to have the latest and greatest, which was obvious, right? I mean, that's what the Note 20 Ultra 5G delivers on. I mean, the camera module is, in my opinion, something to be interested in from my perspective, but that's because I love photography. The average user, I don't really see them needing to move from even something like the Note 8. And the Note 8 only isn't here because that phone got destroyed, and unfortunately, it's not coming back. I still think the Note 8 is a competent device, but when we think of software updates getting long in the tooth and the fact that there is no 512 8 gig of RAM option like you have with the Note 9, I can't put it in the same conversation as these devices. Also, the screen was even smaller, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think the screen real estate has gotten a little out of control, and that's why, again, I look at something like the Fold line and I say, if you're really looking for a bigger device, Samsung has given you that option, as I mentioned earlier in this video. You don't really need a Note to get any larger. And I wonder what the future is for the Note for that reason, because ultimately folding phones have replaced the Note line as being the top tier of Samsung's devices. And in terms of the cutting edge, they are exactly that for the entire industry. You've got Microsoft. I'll be reviewing the Duo soon, which isn't a folding phone. It's a clamshell, but hopefully from a software side, that Android device will be top notch. I'm sure build quality will be good. But will it outperform this device? No, it won't. It will give you a different experience, and whether or not that will take off will be questionable. But the Z Fold 2 has the potential, of course, to give you this and then some. I don't see that with any other device on the market right now. Of course, no pen input with the Z Fold 2, and that is something I will miss if it becomes my daily driver, which is possible, because I've always been a Note fan. You really only appreciate having that pen once it's gone. And I've really loved having this as my daily driver, but I can tell you I miss having the pen. There are many instances where I'm ready to take down a note and I can't do that. I'm not an artist, and so sketching on it isn't what I'm after. It's literally the Note element, the literal name. And with any of these devices, you're good to go. Of course, from every angle, processor, not storage. I mean, yes, by the way, this does have faster storage. So that is going for it. But if you get the 512 model, I mean, the fact that when I first, just did the smart switch from this device to this device, and I mentioned this, or maybe I didn't mention it, I couldn't actually transfer all of my data to my new Note 20 Ultra. What says crap other than something like that? I mean, to go from this phone, which has inferior specs in every way, other than the fact, of course, that it opens up, right? Which is awesome, 6.7-inch, beautiful display in there. I couldn't transfer all of my content to this phone. Samsung, what were you thinking? I mean, this is the top of the line, other than the folding devices, but from a spec perspective, it is the top of the line, even when compared to the folding devices in terms of internals. So I just don't know why they did it. I mean, I know why. It's being profit hungry. It's trying to hold off, getting 512 to become the new standard and 1 terabyte being the upgrade option, which is what I wish they did. But all of that aside, outside of the storage, again, processor, 5G, pen latency, refresh rate on the display. The battery's the largest, but you're not going to get the best battery life unless you get rid of that 120 hertz. The same thing that the S20 Ultra showed all of us, and that was a flop if there ever was one. That's why I didn't cover it. I don't even think it was aesthetically pleasing, which I do think the Note line still holds. So that's the good news. But thankfully they haven't gotten rid of the SD card slot. I mean, we know the Fold doesn't offer it, and that worries me. I mean, what's coming around the corner? We're probably going to lose it. I mean, I don't see a reason that they'll necessarily let us keep it. I mean, they've introduced now for 2 years in a row a lower end Note that now is made out of plastic for $1,000. Hello, Apple. Apple, if you're listening, take notes. Samsung can teach you how you can, well, actually they can't. You use parts that are 3 and 4 years old and market them as new. So I can't make that argument. But Samsung is becoming more and more like Apple in the same way that Microsoft has literally move towards the way Apple operates. And I'm speaking strictly in terms of profit margins. We are their litmus. If we give our money to them and they give us less, they have no reason to change that pattern. I mean, right? That's what it's all about. So the Note 20 Ultra delivers on paper and in real world performance other than battery life because of that 120 hertz refresh rate, which I welcome, but I've already turned off. Not in this video, but I've already turned it off to make sure it could get through a day, and it can. The cameras are a game changer, especially the Pro mode. That's something that generally, you reserve for a device like this one right here that I'm also reviewing, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. This phone is fantastic, but it's also really expensive at $1,200. I don't know how many people are going to dump brand loyalty, which unfortunately is a thing, and come over to Sony, which used to be a force in this business, but hasn't been for many years. In fact, this is the first device from Sony that I can use on Verizon. And I've been a Verizon customer for years now because if you live on the East Coast of the United States or have, like myself, used to live in New York, there was no brand that could compete with Verizon's network. So today things are different, but Verizon is still number one for a reason. And I'm not being paid to say this. In fact, I'm not paid by anyone to say anything. If you follow my channel, you already know that. No paid sponsorships to date. And I don't plan on taking them. I've had offers. You never know what the future brings, but there's one way to make sure I remain impartial, and that's not to take a check or cash or any other form of payment. So back to basics here. The Note 20 Ultra, as I've said, top to bottom, best smartphone on the market right now in 2020. It's the best device in terms of raw performance, camera performance, the display that I've ever handled. Does that mean it's worth $1,300? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that because phones have just gotten that good. I mean, they really have. And that's why I brought out the Note 9 and Note 10 Plus. Because either of these devices, in my opinion, as I've stated over and over, is already top of the line. This is just bleeding edge. Now, if you need bleeding edge, you already know you should be picking up this phone. And this isn't a full review. These are just initial impressions. I know it's a long video, but that's how I roll. By the way, not in love with the S Pen moving over here to the left side. I really don't know what they were thinking. I think this was clearly an engineering move because of the camera module. If you think about the camera is on the left of the back of the device, the pen is on the right. So this had something to do with the redesign with the camera module, because when you look at the older Notes where the pen was always where it belonged, on the right side, sorry lefties, I throw lefty, I don't golf lefty, somewhat ambidextrous. Check it out. Camera module's on the left side, right? S Pen's on the left side. In other words, they're both on the right side of the phone. The camera module made a move. Here, it's in the center, so I can't even make the same comparison. But that seems to be the clear reason why the S Pen moved. I haven't heard anybody say that Samsung looked at all the generations and figured out they've done it wrong this whole time. It's obvious that with this camera system, they didn't have room for them to be on the same side of the device anymore. And so, instead of putting the camera here, which would have created even more problems, they put the camera as the number one priority where it should be on the device, and put the S Pen where it shouldn't be. Go figure. That's just my take on it. Overall, I think the thing that I like the least about this phone is, other than the battery life issue and the 128 gigs of storage in this base $1,300 configuration, is the same thing I hated about the iPhone that made this all possible and plausible. A camera hump, a camera bump, whatever you want to call this. It's an egregious design flaw, in my opinion. And it makes you need to put a case on the device. Forget that it's ugly. And I love cameras. If you follow my channel, you know that. So it's hard for me to cope with that we finally get better camera options on phones, but we're getting it in the form of an eyesore. So much design, right, comes into play with these phones and the evolution of that design language. And then it's just like, glue this crap right here. Just fart that thing right on. And the fingerprint magnet is still a fingerprint magnet. So if you're wondering, like right now it doesn't look bad, but I'm sure on other angles you've seen it looks gross. Look at that, nasty. So, I mean, it's a give and take. I still think it's the best phone on the market. I'm critical. I'm always critical. That's not going to change. Samsung could have done a better job. I did not think they'd go the way of Apple with the camera bump like they did when the S20 Ultra was launched. But the reason they did it is because all of those users out there bought the iPhone with the whack-a-mole camera array. So they weren't going to say, hey, if it works for them, it won't work for us. No, if it worked for them, you better believe Samsung is going to make it work too. And so we're the recipients of Apple customers making poor decisions. And those are customers in general. By the way, it's like, I'm not against people owning Apple devices. I just want to raise awareness. Information is power. Those free thinkers out there, you know who I'm talking about. I want to make sure that people are aware that they have options. And look, there are still people out there that think that if you don't own an iPhone, you're a second-class citizen. So I don't think you're a second-class citizen if you own an iPhone. Let me make that abundantly clear. Everybody has a right to make their choice like anything. And buying an Apple product is, where you want to put your money. I understand it. You're a slave to the ecosystem. It applies to all ecosystems. I get it. But most people I know that have broken away from Apple these days and experienced a device like this, they don't know where they were all these years. But I'm just reiterating that because, wow, I've watched the landscape change tremendously, not only reviewing products here on YouTube, but as an investor in technology since I was in high school, and just watching things evolve. Samsung has done an amazing job, but they used to be a little bit more independent. I can say that about a lot of companies, but this is all about the Note 20 Ultra. So again, fantastic phone. Call quality is great. Everything is great. I really haven't hit any impediments other than the battery life, and I'm still working on that. And that's why this is an update and not a full review. I will be doing a comparison between these two, even though you got a good taste of that. I will be doing a comparison with the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II. I don't think I'll be comparing it to the Note 9 because there's not really much to compare there. Design language is totally different. The screen real estate, totally different. And the focus on cameras really had not become abundantly clear if you didn't notice. I mean, 2 cameras, 3 cameras, 3 cameras, but 3 cameras that now one has, 5 times optical zoom. One of them has a 108 megapixel sensor, which I hate that they do this stuff. And I'll get into that in the full review. I mean, come on, let's cut the crap, shall we? But the laser autofocus on here is very good. This does record 8K video, by the way. Another slap in the face with that 128 gigs of storage. How are you going to shoot 8K video even with the latest and greatest codecs and have, I know I could stick a 1 terabyte micro SD card in here, but what are you trying to do to me, Samsung? Anyway, that wraps things up. 3 great phones. How much money do you want to spend? Full review will come. The comparisons will come. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And by the way, One UI, Samsung deserves a lot of credit. One UI 2.5 in force on all of these devices. I think it's the best overlay of Android and arguably one of the best, OS's, DeX being fully fleshed out on this device and being able to be used wirelessly is a beautiful thing. It's just a great platform, and what they've done, Samsung deserves a hell of a lot more credit. I know I'm critical of them, but they also don't get support where they deserve it. They've come a really long way from that first Note in 2012. Any questions or comments, and this exploding one from what was the Note 7 again? Was that 2016? Yeah, I really can't forget that. That was the year the house got destroyed by Hurricane Matthew. At any rate, any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button, and as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.